Back on at 11:23.
You mentioned...
Nick, if I may, could I clarify something? I said earlier, you asked me a question. I thought about it. You asked me about being a drug dealer. I think for clarification, I think it's ridiculous, this quote-unquote smoking gun. I did give James O'Keefe Viagra, so that may also qualify. I don't want to get hit, on a perjury trap.
Did you also tell James O'Keefe that you had sold benzos and cocaine?
Not that I recall.
Objection.
But he's a fantasist, so whatever, whether I'm a CCP agent or Mossad or whatever else, all anything for a narrative frame. Also, I saw he tweeted the video in question from May 2023. So now we have a video we could watch. You could read back to me the transcript of exactly what I said, since I didn't recall from 2 years and 3 months.
Did you sell any other drugs besides marijuana?
I'm going to interject here. I'm, of course, not Mr. Tyrmand's counsel. He is represented by counsel, but I do just want to know, we're venturing into territory that seems to have nothing to do with this case, and frankly, the witness has a Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination. So I'd really appreciate it if we could stay on topic, particularly given that we are on a time limit. So
I'm going to reiterate my question. Have you sold any other drugs besides marijuana?
No. And selling marijuana is a loose definition of giving people pot in college in 1999, 2000. This is really what you're going to hang your hat on, James? Solid.
Well, I think you're the one who invoked providing Viagra, invoked sort of this
He asked me for it.
habit of providing drugs to others.
Well, Viagra is over the counter in many places. Benzodiazepines are a class 2 narcotic, I believe, and that's what he was addicted to, that his girlfriend was giving him regularly in those messages. Again, people have a right to know. We didn't know that he was addicted to benzodiazepines, but here we are. So that actually explains quite a bit of the behavior, I think. Not somebody you should entrust with major budget of an organization and 70 employees.
Well, maybe since you take issue with the word sell or sale, have you provided drugs to others?
No. I don't do these drugs. I don't like these drugs. I have been an occasional smoker of pot decades ago. In fact, James O'Keefe joined me once in Bahamas smoking pot. So if he wants to, try double standard, just like the conflict of interest around investments, let's roll.
All right. Let's get back to the media appearances.
Sure.
We've talked about 5 or 6 appearances on Tucker Carlson, 2 on the Dangerous Rhetoric podcast, this conservative event in Naples. What other media appearances have you made?
I've done a few over the years when I do my independent journalism, whether it's on Hunter Biden or Brazil, which is what I was on Tucker for. I don't have a CV media sheet. It's very sporadic. I used to do War Room, Steve Bannon's podcast, until he asked me to violate the law and sweep all of James's behavior under the rug to protect him because, as he said, and I quote, "I don't care if he was diddling kids. He's a general in this movement, and we need him." Now, this is a guy who, end quote, this is a guy who has violated the law many, many times and has...
I'm sorry, who are we talking about?
Stephen K. Bannon. And this is a guy who idolizes Leni Riefenstahl as the greatest figure in political propaganda and media. Cult of personality is his stock and trade. So I did used to do a show until it came to an end because of this, and I refused to comply with that directive to sweep this stuff under the rug as if I had the power to unilaterally do that, which I never did.
How many times did you appear on Steve Bannon's War Room show?
I don't know. Many over years.
Is that more than 10? Is that more than 20?
Yeah, it's more than 10.
More than 20?
Probably, yeah. More than 20, definitely.
More than 50?
Maybe that's the upper bound. I don't know. I'd have to.
Somewhere between 20 and 50 is your best approximation? Yeah. And that's what? Steve Bannon is, how would you describe that show, The War Room?
MAGA on steroids. Very tabloidy, pulp.
Is it a long form interview show? Is that what it is?
It's a podcast where it's like a news information show, information used in quotes. Short segments, 5-minute segments.
What years were you making your appearances?
I made appearances on behalf of Project Veritas, pumping our investigations as well. What years? I don't know, when did it launch? It launched during the first impeachment of Trump. So what would that be, 2019 or so? And then I went through 2023. So it was 2018-19 to 2022 or 3. So that 3-year period.
Okay. And you stopped, if I understood, I'll make sure I got this right. There were allegations he was wrapped up in the Epstein stuff. Is that what I heard?
That's a more recent development, but yeah.
Oh, I heard something about diddling kids, so I didn't know what you meant by that.
Oh, no, I don't think he was actually condoning diddling kids. That was just his way of being hyperbolic, because he speaks in hyperbole, saying it doesn't matter what James O'Keefe did. He's a general in this movement. We protect him.
Oh, I see.
It's not his ass on the line. My response was, there may have been legal violations here, and we have employees who are becoming whistleblowers about it. And his response to that was, who cares about the law? You think we care about the law? We cared about the law at Breitbart or the White House? To which I responded, you don't, which is why you have the problems you have continually.
Okay, so the reason you stopped appearing was more or
After
less...
that conversation, he banned me from the show. On air, he publicly stated, Matthew Tyrmand will never, ever come on the show again. So,
All right.
again, my dogs still love me, so I'm not losing that much sleep over it.
All right. So Tucker Carlson, Dangerous Rhetoric, The War Room, the conservative event. Have you spoken at other conservative events?
Over the years, yeah, not anything recently.
Which events have you spoken at over the years?
I had different conferences here or there. I speak in Europe more, Hungary and Poland. I live in Poland part-time.
Okay, and
just
what
spoke.
issues do you speak on in Poland?
National sovereignty as a political movement.
So is it fair to say you're outspoken in the conservative political movement in the United States?
Objection to form.
Less so than Europe. I've never been recognized on the street in the U.S. and Poland, which is a small country I have.
You're recognized on the street in Poland?
In Poland, yeah.
And for what? Why is it that people on the street in Poland would recognize you?
My father was a famous anti-communist dissident, and then I became visible when I started going there. I wrote 2 books. I am very involved in the Polish political debate. I have advised the formerly ruling party, now opposition party, Law and Justice. So I'm just politically involved there, and it's a small sandbox. So there's maybe 1,000 public intellectuals in the political debate, and over the last 12 or 13 years, I've become one, though it's sparing, and I don't go back there much these days. I've been busy. Other things, selling out to Pfizer, so to speak. It's a euphemism. It's not literal.
So you're one of 1,000 or so public intellectuals in Poland.
I mean, I'm picking a random number just to show that there's not as much breadth or depth as in the U.S. It's a finite sandbox.
I'm just trying to reconcile your statement that you're not a public figure and that's why you would object to your messages.
I'm not a public figure in the U.S. A few media appearances does not make for somebody who has waived all right to privacy. If I wanted,
Well, waiving all right to privacy and being a public figure are 2 different questions.
Objection. You're headed into legal territory here. These are legal conclusions.
Yeah, I'm just say that the determination of a public figure is not, well, I think you're there.
well, I'm honored by your clear respect for my activities, but I disagree. I don't have 3.2 million Twitter followers, 3.2 million Instagram followers, 1 million institutional and organizational and personal Telegram followers and such, that when I can't gin up a mob, let's put it that way. I have no ability to do so. And even in defending myself publicly, all I do is get shit on. Excuse my French.
How many followers do you have on Twitter, X?
119,000. It's pretty moribund. Hasn't really moved much in the last couple years.
And it was Hannah who suggested in this email exchange that she was thinking about airing your private messages as well?
Objection to form.
Which, I don't know which you're referencing.
You don't recall that?
Which are you referencing? I mean, if you're going to quote something that somebody else said about me, you should have the just good form legally to let me know what it is, not just abstractly refer to it.
Well, I was just seeing if you had a memory of it, but we can find it.
was that last thing you showed on the screen, an exhibit? You never did mention.
I don't know what the last thing I showed on the screen was. Exhibit 4 is my last.
Exhibit 4.
Is my last exhibit. That's the LinkedIn message to.
That's what it was. That's
Okay,
not-
yeah, that's exhibit 4. This will be exhibit 5. It's a 3-page email thread, including between Mr. Tyrmand and Hannah Giles.
Should I start from the bottom?
Yes, sir.
Will you put it in the chat, please, Nick?
Yep.
Thank you.
All right, it's in the chat, Michael.
Okay. What would you like to discuss about
Thank
this
you.
email exchange?
So it begins at the bottom. This is an email of May 30th, 2023 from Hannah Giles, and it's addressed to gentlemen. I assume that's the board. Do you recall who the addressees were?
I would assume it was board and officers, so that would be myself, Garvey, Barton, Skakel. Alembic was, I think, already gone at that point. In fact, pretty certain he was. And then it would have been Tom. I don't know if Dan was gone. Dan might have been gone already. Yeah, Dan was gone at this point, I believe. So Tom, I don't know what other officers would be on. Tom, Hannah obviously sent it. So that's my recollection, and I'm inferring based on the practice of the time.
Okay. And you stated earlier that you were supportive as a board member of filing the federal complaint against James O'Keefe.
Yes.
And then Hannah mentions here not only are you going to file the complaint, but you're going to update the Project Veritas website with the evidence meant for public dissemination at 11 a.m. Eastern. Were you supportive of that decision as well?
I was.
What was the purpose of that?
Objection to form.
We were getting pilloried by a false narrative set by your client that we ousted him in a coup, that there was no cause, that there could be nothing because he is an innocent lamb and an angel who would never do anything wrong. And yet here we are looking through the spending and seeing the pattern of behavior and practice that necessitated us coming to this point to do this interventionary board meeting. And so the thought was, put it out there and let people consume it so they see that it's not this one-sided narrative driven by a narcissistic egomaniac that lies with impunity. I mean, just lies.
What evidence was it that was meant for public dissemination?
I don't remember exactly granularly what was put out there, but I remember a couple of the bullet points, something about the cars and the average cost, the DJ equipment, some of the flight, like the helicopter. If memory serves, there was a couple of those bullet points that are demonstrable proof of malfeasant spending. I mean, if you're a serious person, not if you're on Twitter worshiping a cult of personality that can do no wrong, but if you're a serious person, you look at that and be like, yeah, that's not good. That's not the way it should be.
And I'm going to object to form.
In my understanding that it was more of a bullet pointed list of the allegation against James rather than direct evidence of those things.
Objection to
Say
form.
so.
Is that right?
You say so. I don't recall exactly what was put out exactly what point. What I was citing was there was something put out with some bullet points of spending, inappropriate spending. That's what I remember.
Are you aware that Tom O'Hara and Ben Wetmore collaborated on those talking points?
Objection to form.
Objection to
No.
form.
No.
Were you involved in drafting those talking points?
I don't recall if I was directly involved. I'm sure there were drafts sent back and forth, and I viewed, and I probably had some input because I was very engaged in this process from February onward. I mean, I had to be. That was my responsibility. And when people said, "Oh, you should just resign from the board," that and in general, why doesn't just the board run away from this? Well, I don't believe legally that would absolve you from remediating things that went wrong under your watch. I'm not in the habit of cutting and running. It's just not my personality.
And then, Hannah says, I've discussed this briefly with each of you, so you and she had a discussion about the public dissemination?
I'm sure we did. We talked
Sorry,
quite
can
a
you
bit.
repeat the question?
I was just asking if he could confirm whether he and Hannah had a discussion about this public dissemination.
I'll object to form.
And then she says, apparently there are a series of text messages between Matthew and James that are less than appropriate in multiple ways. Did you discuss that with her?
Yeah, I think so. I vaguely recall, and it's the same exact thing that I mentioned to you earlier about my communications with James on Telegram, locker room talk about a female.
She says in multiple ways, but your read is it's just that one thing?
I think it was just one, and I was already, I think because Dan was gone, I was already quite displeased with Hannah, and she knew that, so she was trying to figure out ways to sever me from the organization so she could take unilateral control and continue to bleed the bank account into her personal property.
Do you think that's what she did?
I think that, yeah, with
Objection to form.
her and Joe Barton certainly saw me as an impediment to her having unilateral control, which I thought was ridiculous. You earn control based on behavior, practice, action, and results, not just say, oh, I need this now to get those results, because you can't put the toothpaste back in the tube.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. My question was perhaps too general. Do you think she bled the Project Veritas account into her personal account?
Oh, yeah, I think she paid herself quite well for no results whatsoever. I don't know if I can't speak to the exact dollar figures relative to the balance sheet, but yeah, she expropriated what she could, which was around $20,000 a month plus expenses for 7 months. So by my estimate, that was about probably with expenses $200,000 for a woman that didn't have a driver's license or a passport or a relevant ID. I mean, she was like a child.
But the $20,000 a month was the salary that she negotiated with the board, correct?
Yes, that was after some negotiation. She wanted a lot more initially.
All right, but it is an amount that, although you might take issue with it, the board agreed to pay her that sum of money.
Yeah, we negotiated down to that, and that was under the premise of she would help us as a public face of the organization, both in terms of relationships with the greater community outwardly, as well as with donors, help us sort of move forward to whatever degree we might be able to salvage the organization, while we're getting chipped at by the public debate as spun by the narrative fallacies of Jimmy O'Keefe.
Beyond her collecting her salary, do you believe that she misappropriated money from the Project Veritas account for her personal use?
Objection to form.
I never saw her steal or spend money on DJ equipment or private helicopter rides. I never saw her do the things that James did. I just saw her take the salary and promise the world in terms of what she might do efficaciously on behalf of the organization, and did nothing but sow dissent internally and create a divide and conquer. She lied a lot. She got caught lying. So, I mean, to me, that's just as bad as stealing.
You mentioned sow dissent internally. Was it your habit to be in direct contact with many of the employees at Project Veritas?
Objection to form.
Joined.
It depended on the context. There were two formats where I had direct employee contact within professional capacity. One was journalism. I'm also a journalist. I weighed in on a lot of the journalism, whether it was editing. I mean, James O'Keefe wanted to do a story during COVID about the meme stock trading, and it was such a stupid story. It was a non-story about margin calls, trying to create some sort of narrative fallacy that was not journalistic at all that demonstrated that the banks were colluding against the little investor. And that wasn't, accurate at all. I mean, we could go into a deep talk on how margin Reg T requirements work with the SEC. But the banks were following the laws. James wanted to make a story of it. But the reason he wanted to make a story it came out was because he wanted to dress up as James O'Gecko, gray his hair. That's when he started graying his hair. Which he became a thing, because he's a performer. So the bulletproof vest marked press, the hair graying. This was the first time he grayed his hair, and he liked the look of it, so he did it a lot more. But he just wanted an opportunity to sit there in a two-toned, different collar, Wall Street-style suspenders and tie and big glasses from the 80s and grayed hair, and then talk about this as James O'Gecko with a cigar in his hand. And I spoke to Joe Halderman, the producer, 10 times. I was in Vermont during COVID. I remember calling him. I'm like, dude, this is an embarrassment. This is not a story. So, I mean, there were many instances like that. And by the way, not just negative, but positive as well. I mean, we're doing stuff on Pfizer. I'm a healthcare analyst for 20 years. I'm a healthcare banker. I literally run an investment banking practice around drug development. So, I have some subject matter expertise. So there were things like that where I'd weigh in. There was stuff in other professional capacities when, for instance, James couldn't talk to people because he's incredibly Asperger's, so he can't have relationships with people, he can't empathize. So there were employee issues that he'd say, well, you talk to Eric Spracklin, you talk to this employee. And so I was sanctioned to do so. And then the other, I was at a lot of employee events. I mean, I was friendly with these people. But the other big bucket of employee communication that was sort of bilateral was incoming from them to me to complain about James. And James believed, and he said this repeatedly, that there should be a Chinese wall. Well, he doesn't know what, like fiduciary duty, he doesn't know what a Chinese wall means. A Chinese wall is to protect against things that would actually be conflicts of interest and conflicted where the information rights could lead to something dishonest, like material non-public information on an investment banking division versus a trading desk on Wall Street. But when employees have complaints about their superiors, it's one thing if it's their direct report, then they go to James. But if they had a complaint about James's behavior, who do they go to? He would say nobody. Well, that's not the way a board works. That's not the way fiduciary duty works. That's not the way employment law works. They have to have some valve. And since I knew them, because I was involved in the operations of the organization, pretty hands-on, pretty frequently in the office, especially when I was living in New York, they would come to me with complaints. And so I would have to, figure out how to adjudicate them. That was the role of a board member, in my view. And I was the board member in this setting that had these relationships and was more of a colleague and a peer. John Garvey and George Skakel are pretty aloof. They're much older. They're senior. They didn't have relationships. So that just was what it was. And James was anathema to him. I should never talk to anybody. But he also would go around the office and say that employees shouldn't talk to one another unless he was there. So his belief as a narcissist was that everybody's relationship exists with him as the hub and everyone else a spoke, and nothing else matters except him at the center of it. Which is obviously not a way to run an organization. It's not the way to behave as a human being.
Let's look at 2022 as a snapshot.
Sure.
How often were you in the Project Veritas office?
Not very. I was already moved to Florida. But I was there a few times, all hands. I'd be at the all hands.
When did you move to Florida?
April 2021.
All right. In the year 12 months prior to you moving to Florida, how often were you in the Project Veritas office?
I don't know exactly, but somewhere between half a dozen and a dozen. Certainly all hands, certain investigative story releases, Christmas party, stuff like that. Probably average once, sometimes when we were busy and there was meetings twice a month. I mean, it varied.
Outside of physical presence, were you often speaking to the employees over the phone or text message?
Objective form.
On the phone, no. I was in the group team Telegram chat. So there was engagement.
Were any other board members in the group team Telegram chat?
Barton was on and off. He was for a bit and then wasn't, and then I think he was again. I don't remember exact flow of timeline on that, but because he was also an undercover journalist and he coached a lot of the journalists over the years.
So of the board members, other than Joe Barton, well, it was just you and Joe Barton who were in this Telegram chat with the employees, right?
Yeah. George and Garvey and Alembic, I don't think even had or knew what Telegram was. Alembic might have. Alembic's the one who tried to murder his wife, then committed suicide, who James says publicly was the one good board member.
So Hannah says, I have asked the auditors from Dorsey to share the content with the board and I. We're talking about the text messages between you and James.
I'm sorry, what are you looking at here?
Exhibit 5.
Yeah. What's the question?
And it says, with the hope of having an open, honest, and adult discussion concerning this part of the audit. Based on the auditor's characterization, I feel the board should be able to see and assess internally how to move forward. I understand the arguments for and against seeing this content. I just want to be clear that my desire is for more information, not less. The auditors are willing to walk through these text messages with us via Zoom or to send us the files directly. And then, let's see, that's email was sent at 10:58 p.m. and at 11:10 p.m., so 12 minutes later. Wait.
No, you're.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
My apologies.
I was 10:58.
Scratch that. Hannah's original email was at 9:31 p.m., the one I just read from.
Yep.
And then you replied an hour later at 10:34 p.m., right?
Yep.
And then your objection is that those messages are not germane to an investigation of James's actions, right?
Yep.
Why are your actions not germane to the investigation of PV's management?
If I, as I clarified in here, if I had sanctioned any activity that was under investigation, if I was complicit, if I was an accomplice, those facets would certainly make them germane. My locker room banter with somebody I was close friends with for many years, I didn't view as germane, but I knew that's what she was getting at. Keep in mind, this is, I believe, when was the video that James O'Keefe just aired on Twitter that you asked me about earlier with Jake Mantell saying I should resign? What was that, May 23rd? Okay, so that was May 23rd. This is May 30th. I know that Hannah's already trying to manipulate the situation. I mean, she brought in an employee to spin him up to demand that I resign and then recorded it. So, I mean, I know what she's up to here. I mean, this was already, things were tense. Dan was out of the picture because she had pushed him out and basically forced his resignation. So this was not a friendly dynamic. I mean, to add color to that, she brought in an employee named Patrick into James's office, and he relayed this to me immediately after, called me immediately after, with her sitting at James's desk and said, I just want you to know that Tyrmand said very bad things about you. So she's taking my messages, and this was right around the same time, and saying to this employee that I said very bad things. I mean, that's not management, that's not hierarchical integrity at all. But here's the real kicker. She's a moron. And she didn't realize that the Patrick I was talking about was a different Patrick. And he realized it because he's not a moron. And the date from that exchange that she was citing and showed him about me saying we probably have to fire Patrick was about a Patrick that predated him, and he wasn't employed at the organization then. So, the content.
I get a chance to this, but I'm going to insert an objection to the form of the question, whatever that may have been at this point.
And I'll just mark that comment for the record in support of a day 2 deposition.
But that's some color for you. I'm all about it, but if we can do it by Zoom, it's probably easier than coming back up to Jacksonville.
That's fine. And then you say in that same email, I will not consent to personal messages of mine or anyone else's being distributed in any fashion that would allow such images of personal correspondence to be electronically maintained by third parties that do not have the same level of custodial responsibility embedded in their roles. That's your statement, right?
Yeah, it's a good statement, I think.
But you're now supportive of James's messages being distributed and maintained by third parties?
Third party, well, that third party would have been Project Veritas, his former employer, who he had signed a contract with related to things like information on firm devices. That's a totally different standard.
And I will object to the form.
Do you have a signed contract that talks about PV being able to access his information maintained on third-party servers?
Objection to form.
That's a semantic game you just played. It's not third-party servers. It's the PV server that's in question.
Do you know how Telegram works?
Third-party servers also, in the same vein, devices. So it's not just servers, it's devices.
Do you know how Telegram works?
No, I'm a Luddite.
Okay.
I know it works. It's quite a good app. I'm an end user, not a programmer.
And then, let's see. George Skakel chimes in at 10:44. And then you reply again at 10:58. And you say, I agree in practice, since no one here did anything illegal or promoted doing anything illegal. I guess that statement you intended to exclude James O'Keefe?
I mean, that's very, very clear. I agree in practice since no one here did anything. James O'Keefe was not on this email.
Are you aware of Dan Strack's affirmation that James did nothing illegal?
Objection to form.
I am not, and that, that is up to Dan Strack to make a determination.
And I will join in the objection.
I believe that the sentiment people have is that they want to short shrift any of these behaviors in terms of their letter and spirit of law, lest it come back and bite them personally, that they might have been complicit or an accomplice after the fact by not doing anything. I don't share that same view of risk. My own belief is that you let it all out there. If there's something gray, you determine it the right way through an adjudicative process and an analytical process, not just see no evil, hear no evil, which is George Skakel certainly his regimen in the way he applies these things.
So you think Dan Strack's statement that James has done nothing illegal was just sort of a cover your ass sort of statement?
Yes.
Objection to form.
I do think that.
Objection to form.
I think that most people have that mentality.
Which exhibit is that in front of you?
5.
There's 6.
Waiting to see when the ornament would come out.
Have you reviewed that exhibit?
Yeah, I'm familiar with it.
You see...
Can you wait till we all see it here?
Sure.
Okay.
Are you good? Oh, I'm waiting on you, counsel.
Yep, go ahead.
Fine.
So you see at the bottom of this exchange on X, Dan Strack confirming that he told Wendy Thursby and her husband that James has done nothing illegal.
Yeah, I see it. Don't have to agree with it. I see it.
You discount that statement from Dan?
I just disagree. I think when, the audit demonstrably shows, because it was multiplicatively corroborated interviews with employees, that an employee had James direct him to mark his personal boat fuel as fuel for work-related activity, that is criminal.
When I showed this to you, you said, I was wondering when the ornament would come out. What are we talking about?
Wendy Thursby, I refer to her as the ornament, Wendy Hirsch.
Why do you refer to her as the ornament?
Because she is a trophy wife socialite who has a personal assistant despite not working, and she has weighed in on this like she's an expert in the full cult of personality schema of James could do no wrong, he's a hero, everybody else is at fault. And I met her at the GOP convention in Milwaukee, and she came up to me, and she had no idea. I had no idea who she was. I'd never seen her visage before. And she immediately got in my face and said, "I should punch you in the face." And I said, "Oh, the ornament." So I called her an ornament. She got very upset about that. She is an ornament. She's a trophy wife who has a personal assistant despite not working.
I'm going to object to this exhibit. It's not a complete exhibit. It looks like the line at the bottom of the page here continues to go on. Do you have the rest of this exchange?
This is what I have.
Okay.
We could review at a later point if there's a further addendum to Dan saying I did say those things. Dan and Tom went down to meet with the Hirsches because they were open to a meeting, and they tried to placate potentially big donors, but there was no getting through to them. And according to their account of it, David just sat there kind of absentee, not really focused, while she just berated them and said James is a hero and blah, blah, blah. Like a lot of the trophy wife socialites who believe that James O'Keefe is an exotic figure. You know, journalist spy is a lot hotter than the pool guy or the tennis pro.
Did you ever solicit a donor by the name of Dr. Richards for an investment in one of your companies?
Yeah.
When was that?
Oh, I don't know the year. Somewhere between 2018 and 2021, if I had to guess. Keep in mind that I already invested in one of his companies first. In fact, the company in question that we had discussed earlier.
So, and you were, you had a certain fidelity to the conflict of interest policy of Project Veritas, right?
Objection
Yeah.
to form.
Yes,
Joined.
emphatically.
All right. Explain how it's not a conflict of interest to solicit dollars from a donor for an investment that might otherwise go to Project Veritas.
Again, objection to form. He's also calling for a legal conclusion.
As
Go
you
ahead.
understand the term conflict of interest.
Sure. The supposition there is so silly that it must have only sprung from the wellspring of mental lunacy that is James O'Keefe, as narcissically believes everything revolves around the hub and spoke that is his ego. Dr. Richards is a very, very successful businessman who's built and sold a dozen companies in healthcare over 30 or 40 years. He was also an advisor to the organization, a mentor to both James and myself, a friend, somebody we both spent time with, an advisor personally and professionally, and to the organization, who brought in people of his network to help in the organization, which generally didn't work, and he learned a lot about James from those experiences of bringing in people in his network to help in the organization. He was a very savvy professional healthcare participant in the marketplace, building and selling multiple companies, including one that he recruited me to invest in that I later did some work for as an advisor, just indirect work, advisory, helped him find a CEO, helped introduce him to some investors. This is the company that has been utilized as a cutout to prove that I am a CCP agent. And since Dr. Richards also was involved in the company, James put his photo up in the documentary, knowing that that piece of crap article was fallacious and taken down because once Dr. Richards decided that he wasn't going to blindly support James O'Keefe, he became an enemy as well, even though this is a guy who was a donor to the organization, a donor to many organizations, a politically engaged guy, a successful businessman. So I invested in this company of his first, and then I showed him some of the stuff I've worked on, and he invested in one of them. He then later recruited me. I didn't recruit him. He recruited me to do some work with this company I invested in, Cathade. I don't know how that would be a conflict of interest. It had nothing to do with Project Veritas. And the idea that there's a fixed set of the only place I've ever heard that silly statement was from James O'Keefe, that Project Veritas is the only thing that matters. Padding my budget is the only thing that matters. Getting me paid, getting me funded so I can do what I want to do is the only thing that matters. It's not a zero-sum game. The marketplace doesn't work like it's a zero-sum game. Dr. Richards is worth some large sum of money. I don't know the number. And if he wants to give $10,000 to one organization or $100,000 to that same organization or $100,000 to that and 10 other organizations and also wants to invest in healthcare companies, that's his prerogative as a successful, individualistic participant in markets and philanthropy and whatever, and politics and whatever else he does. So to suggest that's a conflict of interest because you're crowding out the sums of money. By the way, I don't think he was that big a donor to PV. And to suggest that, and I know he was a big donor to some other groups, in fact, groups that he helped James O'Keefe get access to. So, this thing is not linear. They're not siloed. They all exist in an ecosystem of activity. And to say it's a conflict that one thing crowds out another is stupid. It's just stupid. It's only something, I don't fault you for putting forward such a silly supposition. That is a classic O'Keefeism. So you're just following orders. I get it.
Did you solicit investments from other PV donors?
Objection to form.
The only people that I ever spoke about, and when you say solicit, you make it sound like a tawdry, like I'm prostituting my activities in the private sector. The only people I discussed my private sector activities with were high knowledge individuals who I built relationships with over years, who expressed interest and were also creating a bilateral dynamic in such format. So that would be Dr. Richards, George Skakel, Dan long after the fact. So, it's not even germane to this because it's years later that we co-invested in things together. Garvey and I talked deals, never did anything together. He's also a professional investor who runs a massive family office. Doesn't change whatever he does in the family office with what he gives out of the foundation, nonprofit. We never consummated anything. If there was anybody else, you can refresh me, but I don't recall. I'm sure there were other people I spoke about this. I don't think there was anybody who was, a PV donor per se that we co-invested in things. As if, and by the way that's always framed in these documentaries and media hits, that they were co-investing in each other's companies like it's sinister. Welcome to capitalism is how jobs are created. It's how medical innovations break through. They find the capital and they then innovate. They're funded to innovate.
Did you ever disclose to PV through its board or James O'Keefe that Dr. Richards was investing in one of your companies?
Me disclosing that would be just as relevant as me saying I put on a pair of socks this morning. It's not relevant at all. Zero relevancy. And James O'Keefe didn't find it relevant when he put $15,000 into ClaimFound. He didn't report it to John Garvey or the PVA board because it wasn't relevant. And when it's him, he realizes how irrelevant it is. But when he can spin up a narrative fallacy that he can gin up clicks for to suggest, ooh, there's something sinister afoot, then it's relevant. No, it doesn't work that way. But everybody knew that I am an investment banker and I have a venture fund and that I invest mostly in healthcare companies. All sorts of tech, but healthcare, consumer, lots of stuff. But a lot of healthcare. That was my practice area on Wall Street as an equity long-short portfolio manager. And then it's my practice area as a banker at Bradley Woods. Another thing that has been tweeted about nonstop by James O'Keefe and his proxies, that my connection to an investment bank was never disclosed in a conflict of interest statement. Why would it? If I was a bus driver, would it also be necessary that I document my bus driving? If I was driving Uber, is that relevant? He rides in Ubers. Everything revolves around him. He rides in Ubers. I drive an Uber. Do I have to disclose that? That sounds like a conflict of interest according to this paradigmatic schema. Really silly. So silly. Proceed.
Are you currently with Bradley Woods?
Yeah, in some capacity.
In what capacity?
Bradley Woods is an old school merchant bank, so people do deals. I am registered as a banker there. I have my series licenses with the SEC, and by the way, he's calling to harass them, which is I may have to take action on. There's no relevance.
Is Bradley Woods listed on your LinkedIn profile?
No.
Why not?
Because I can do my finance stuff, it's not a public-facing thing. And because what is listed on my LinkedIn profile is more political type activity, activism, I think I had PV on it for a while, like the book I wrote in Poland about politics, Open the Books, which I've helped build, I'm sure we'll talk about. That stuff is outward facing. I don't advertise, I don't cold call. When I do investment activity, I do it with knowledgeable people who are accredited investors, and I have the conversation. But everybody in the world knows that I work with Bradley Woods at PV because I have business cards. And I give them out. I have one on. I could give you a business card. It says Matthew Tyrmand, Corporate Finance, Healthcare, and TMT.
You have one?
Yeah. You want it?
I think we should attach it as an exhibit, yeah.
Certainly.
What's the latest exhibit there?
6.
Thanks.
I gave them out to everyone, and I would, everyone who it's relevant to hand out a business card to. And so it wasn't a secret.
Thanks.
The only person it was a secret to, and it was like a aha, or as they say in Spanish, ojalá moment, was James O'Keefe. Because even though I knew him for, 15 years, he never once asked because he doesn't care. He only cares about himself. So any other activity that any other people do is of no interest to him until it's of interest to him. And it's now of interest to him because he can spin up narrative fallacy.
That'll be exhibit 7.
Do you want to show this to anybody else online?
I don't think so.
Hey, James, I have a business card. Bradley Woods.
I would like a copy. Are you going to be able to?
I'll mail it.
I can get it from.
I can
get it
send
afterwards.
you the PDF of it. I'll take a picture of the front and back and send it to you later. I can mail you one in an envelope if you'd like. COD.
Whatever works. I'm happy to take it from your counsel or just get it from the court reporter afterwards.
Everybody can have them. I give them out like candy. Only James O'Keefe thinks it's a conspiracy because he doesn't know anything about finance or private sector or corporate America or anything. But LARPing as a journalist and singing out of key Mariah Carey a cappella. Yeah, I have business cards. The company's called Bradley Woods. It's been around since like 1962 or 64. Founded in D.C. Office on 3rd Avenue. I haven't been to the office in years. I think they moved offices. There was another conspiracy that they tried to visit the office, but it wasn't there because I think they moved. But BFD, big deal.
Do you also have a role with an advisory firm that provides political intelligence to investment firms?
Not that I'm aware of.
Other than Bradley Woods, do you have any other affiliations with employers?
I'm a consultant, so I do consulting all the time.
Who do you consult through?
Who do I consult through? My own LLC.
And what's that called?
Matthew Tyrmand LLC. Guess how I named it?
What type of consulting do you do?
All forms. Every form of consulting you can imagine.
Explain it to me like I'm 4 years old. Political consulting?
No, I don't take money for politics.
Okay, so
Policy advisory, yeah. I don't do anything political for money. I believe in love of the game. And I don't need to because I've got a pretty successful, thriving business practice in investments. I consult to some nonprofits. I consult to occasionally a media company. I consult to all sorts of stuff. But I'm not going to run through my CV because I don't think it's relevant and I don't need to lay up your client with more people he can harass.
Your income comes primarily from Bradley Woods, or is it, what percentage is accounted for through this consulting firm?
My income comes in different ways, in different forms, and I don't think that's relevant either because I'm a witness here, not a party to this, and there's been no allegation that I'm involved in criminal activity.
Other than the consulting firm and Bradley Woods, do you earn income from any other sources?
Many.
I'm not so interested in investments, but
That's most of it.
okay.
Yeah.
So any other sort of what I consider active labor,
Yeah.
what would those be?
I consult the people who pay me for expertise on policy or media or communications or.
Right. I'm asking other than the consulting you've mentioned and the Bradley Woods gig.
Yeah.
You have any others?
The consulting is a wide umbrella of activities that I do for parties who would like to pay me for whatever purpose it is that we contract to do. And some of them are private companies, some of them are nonprofits, some of them are media entities. I will tell you definitively, they are not politicians. I don't take money from politicians.
So you consult with nonprofits, true? Consult with media companies?
Yeah.
Consult on policy positions with whom?
Nonprofits.
With nonprofits as well?
Yeah.
Any other consulting buckets that I'm missing?
Corporate entities,
Okay.
people engaged in private sector activities who want to hire me to help them in their activities, whether it's strategy or corporate finance advisory or whatever it is. runs a gamut.
Are you paid by any of the Polish political parties that you've mentioned?
Nope.
Have you done consulting for any Polish entities?
Yeah.
Any Polish political parties you've done consulting for?
No. No political parties. Not just Polish. U.S., Polish, Swedish, Belgian, French, Italian, German, Dutch. None of them.
Did you ever solicit investments from employees of Project Veritas?
No. Not well. I mean, Jan Straxon was an employee, but we only talked about investments. We talked about what we invested in, but like whether it's stock trades or privates, but we never did anything until he was long gone.
Is Will Keeper a name that rings a bell?
Will Keeper is a name that rings a bell. I thought he just died, unfortunately.
Did he invest in any of your companies?
I don't think he did. You know what? I will amend my statement. I do remember somebody who did, maybe he did. I don't know if he did. I don't recall. I'd have to check. Jason Killmeyer. It might have been after he left.
I'm sorry, we're talking about two names now.
Yeah.
Will Keeper and Jason Killmeyer.
Yeah.
Which of those individuals invested with your companies?
They might have both. This would have been the same company that James invested in Claim Found, and we're talking like very small sums, like $5,000, $10,000.
And both of these individuals were employees of Project Veritas?
I don't remember the flow of timeline if they were still employed, and I don't even remember definitively if they invested. But we talked about it because they were asking questions about things that I work on. So I told them, and these are both professional individuals. Will was a CEO of publicly traded companies and was an active privates investor. Unfortunately, he passed. And Jason worked for Booz Allen Hamilton and is also a very savvy professional individual.
Did you ask James O'Keefe to invest in a company called Predictive Therapeutics?
Maybe. I mean, that was a company that I was very involved in. They've had a name change since. That was a company that I worked on as a banker for quite a few years, biotech company. So I might have, but I know he did not invest. He invested in Claim Found, $15,000, and then did not disclose it to the board, despite alleging that an investment in anything I did was necessitated a conflict of interest waiver. He never disclosed it. I mean, he's really scraping the bottom of the barrel here, guys. That's what he does. He's a fucking troglodyte. I guess he's going back through his emails for 13 years. That's funny. Really just searching for something to build episode 2 of the mockumentary. I think I know what episode 2 is about.
All right. Exhibit 7 was Mr. Tyrmand's Bradley Woods card. This will be Exhibit 8.
Here's number 6.
Do you have a copy for the witness?
I'm going to have to screen share this one.
Is it proof that I was a drug dealer for the CCP and the Mossad?
Does such proof exist?
Nope.
Oh, 2015, man, we're 10 years in. Yeah, I don't think he invested.
He was literally talking about investment future, how he creates a 401k. So I gave him, some guidance. And I said, what I do is privates. You lock up capital, they're illiquid. And if they do well, it's many multiples of your money back returned profitably with better tax treatment.
So what we're looking at here is an email from you to James O'Keefe on December 9th, 2015.
Yeah, that's approaching 10 years.
And you are sending him what you've labeled as predictive therapeutics execution documents.
Yep.
And what does that mean, execution documents?
It means if you were going to subscribe to a private share sale that is regulated under the SEC, I'd have to look at the rule book, but I think Reg D offering this was. So for accredited investors, if you make over X amount a year, or you have X amount of assets, you can participate in these sort of private offerings of securities in early stage companies with the understanding that they are liquid. It will be years upon, if they are successful, that you would get a return. The trade-off in doing so is that the return is a lot more robust than in the public markets. And so these are, there's a credit investor questionnaire. This was a little bit different than a lot of companies because they were based in Israel. So they're what's called a PFIC, a Private Foreign Investment Corporation. They've since registered in the US, so they're not a PFIC anymore. They also had a name change. I was just showing him this as an example. I don't believe he participated in it. In fact, I'm 99% sure he did not participate in this.
Did you pressure him to participate in the investment?
I don't pressure anybody. I'm very libertarian. I don't tell people what to do, and I don't allow people to tell me what to do. I have a big position in this company. I think it's a potentially good investment. 10 years later, it still hasn't liquefied, but they've done some interesting drug trials. Big believer in helping cure cancer. And James O'Keefe doesn't get pressured by anybody. He does exactly what he wants to do to a fault. That's why we're here.
Bear with me.
Yep, got to follow directions.
Again, I don't have a paper version of this one, so I'll screen share. Exhibit 9 is in the chat.
Thank you.
You will see that, Mr. Tyrmand.
Yeah. That was on, I'm guessing, July 4th, 2023, right?
I don't have the date, unfortunately.
Yeah, I can say with 99% plus conviction it was sent right around then.
And this is it fair to characterize this as your resignation notice from the board?
Yeah, I think that is abundantly clear.
When you begin by saying, poetically, I will respond to this email regarding transparency as per Monsieur Skakel in conveying the following, what are you referencing?
I don't know. I don't have the previous message. So
Why do you refer to him as Monsieur Skakel?
And I will object to this exhibit on the grounds that it's incomplete, so I'd like a copy of the full thing.
me too. Hashtag me too.
Yeah.
It's pronounced Monsieur.
Okay. And
Sporty verbiage.
that's just why do you refer him that way? Just for fun?
Just for fun.
Okay.
You know, if you can't find joie de vivre in your communications, then what's the point of living?
And then you say, "May God have," at the end, "May God have mercy on your larcenous souls."
Yes.
Who was that directed towards?
Hannah. And I don't think Ben was in the picture then, but we, post facto can add him in. Maybe I was a little piqued at Joe Barton because he helped orchestrate it with Hannah. It certainly wasn't against Skakel or Garvey, who I believe are both princely men, even if Skakel can be a little misguided at times. But yes, she has quite the larcenous soul. Her and James, no wonder they worked well together in the early years and then had a falling out. They both are inveterate liars and just not good people. Really bad. She's better looking, he's smarter.
Joe Barton testified that you were fired, not resigned. You disagree?
Yeah, I didn't even let them get to a vote. It was clear I was going to get voted off the board, but I resigned before that ignominy took place.
And I'm going to object to form.
I know that the knives were out because I objected to Hannah's continuing accumulation of unilateral control and power over the organization. I thought that was silly, given how untested, unproven, and how many lies she was caught in. So she and Barton worked together on that and convinced, I believe, Skakel to participate under the guise of we will, once he's out, given the controversies that have circulated based on the way I was named as the proximate cause by James in the narrative setting as the second public face or the public face of the ouster coup, which is why he keeps tweeting about me and committing all these torts in this documentary. George sort of went along and said, hey, last-ditch effort to try and save this place. Needless to say, she could not do anything effectively, and once the money was running very low, she just resigned. So there was no efficacy demonstrated on her part.
I'm going to introduce Exhibit 9, which is a letter from John Thaler to the Board of Directors dated February 21st, 2023.
Ah, yes.
It's...
Do you mean Exhibit 10?
It's 10.
Oh, yeah, I do mean 10. Sorry. And since it's pretty lengthy, I think we talked about launch at 12:30, so I'd suggest that...
We can go through this and then we can adjourn if you want.
Well, I think it's going to take longer.
That's fine, 20 minutes.
I was going to give you time to review it.
I know it.
You know it?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Well, then, any objection to keep going until we get through this?
I'd love to do this. And then
Well, I'd like to know, do you have a sense of how long you're going to be taking on this? Because I'd like to take lunch at least by 1. So
yeah, we'll be...
if it's going to go longer than that, then maybe we break at 12:30 and come back on at 1.
It's hard to say. I can't promise.
I'll talk fast, just kidding.
Are you able to share a copy?
Fine.
Yeah, I know.
I'm open to hearing what others think, what you folks in Florida think. If the court reporter, you could be the decider.
Yeah, if you two want to take a break, we can take a break and come back to this in a half hour, 40 minutes.
I'm fine to keep going.
Okay.
Mr. Whitney, you're sharing a
Yeah,
copy
I'll
with-
get a copy here for you.
I couldn't hear what folks were saying. What's the consensus?
We'll keep going on this.
Okay.
Yeah, I remember this. Do you want to read it? I know it.
It's in the chat now.
Okay, it's in the chat. Okay, what do you want to know?
And Mr. Osborne, you can just tell me when you're ready for me to, if you want to read it first.
Don't read the whole thing. Read along.
Just give me a moment to pull it up.
Thaler is the only person I met that writes and speaks more than I do.
Okay, I'll just note that the paper copy has a highlight on it.
Many highlights.
The electronic version does not. Is that your highlight, or is that something?
No, these are our office's highlights. I can provide an unhighlighted copy if needed.
You provided the unhighlighted copy here. What I'm saying is, there's a highlighted copy in front of the witness right now.
Yeah.
Well, and I would also like to point out that there's a large space between the second to last page and the last page. I don't know whether that's intentionally designed to be misleading or what's going on there, but I will note that.
The penultimate page leads in contextually correctly to the
Yeah.
ultimate page.
In other words, it's not meant to be intentionally misleading, but nice.
Yeah, no, it's fine. This is not a break in content. Okay, what would you like to know?
So who was John Thaler?
John Thaler is a hedge fund manager based in Greenwich, Connecticut, who called me and possibly some other board members right after the board meeting, like not the first board meeting, but like at some point, like within that next couple of days, he called me and immediately tried to build a relationship with me. We both went to University of Chicago. We're both finance guys, so we talked about a little bit about our backgrounds. And he was the, I don't want to say self-appointed, but he was the O'Keefe-appointed, maybe he was the first intermediary. I mean, we had about a dozen or half a dozen plus intermediaries who were trying to be a part of resolution. Now, some of these people were just brazenly bad faith actors. Steve Fettig and Chart Westcott, absolute cartoon characters. I engaged them in good faith. I spoke to them. I said, hey, you want to talk to the staff? You want to understand what really happened? And there was no interest in doing that. Thaler, to his credit, as a more mature, sober individual, he did talk to a few people. I believe he spoke to Tom O'Hara. He might have spoken to Dan Strack. And then we did some group calls. He was the deliverer.
Let me pause you for a second if I could. I'm going to let you finish that answer, but you just threw out two names that I'm not familiar with. Chet.
I'm surprised James didn't tell you about these cartoon characters. Chart Westcott of the Dallas Westcotts. I mean, you should Google him. He's a real piece of work. And Steve Fettig of the Wisconsin Fettigs. They were James's first chosen board replacements who were trying to disintermediate or intermediate between James and the corpus as a whole. They were very bad faith actors and just not good people. I mean, we could talk in depth about them. But we can save that.
Well, had you met Chart Westcott before?
No, we had some mutual friends. I did some digging on him, and he was just a failure as a human being, born on third base, thinks he hit a homer. He like a hedge fund in Dallas, also focused on healthcare stuff. I'd heard they had some pretty bad performance issues, but comes from a family. His family was suing Katy Perry over a mansion in Montecito, who they claim she connived and conned their father out of selling it at a too cheap a price or something like this. There's been a lawsuit wending its way through California court for years. But he sent me lots of Garvey and me, he sent me so many drunk texts. I could pull them up. They're great exhibits. I mean, if we ever get to jury trial, which we're not getting to, Jimmy, they will read amazingly. I mean, just drunk text after drunk text attacking John Garvey and me. And Fettig was a little bit more sober and dispassionate, but not much. He was an inheritor of his father and
Let me pause you again, and we can talk about
You asked.
Steve. Yeah, no, great. You say you just sort of met Chart Westcott.
I never met him in person,
or
ever.
corresponded with, introduced to him, spoke with him.
He just texted me randomly. I never even spoke to him on the phone.
All right, and then somehow that evolved into him attacking you?
Yeah, he attacked me on Twitter. I mean, he's attacked me in messages. I mean, he would
But how long was it after that two of you were introduced by text message that he started attacking you?
a few days, a week or two.
And what was the reason he was attacking you?
Objection. Speculation.
He took everything James said as a fait accompli. Silly people, take each other seriously. And he said that this plot is not going to go through and I'm going to end up on the ash heap of history. I'm paraphrasing. I don't remember the quotes. I mean, we could read the text if you want. They're really funny. But I think we should focus. I'll give you that background. And then Fettig Fettig was a little more serious. We had a very serious back and forth. He was a mutual contact of another advisor named Eric O'Keefe, who had introduced him to James, and he had flown James on the family private jet, so James was in love with him. And he had messaged back and forth with John, myself, and maybe some of the other board members. And he said, look, I've run a big business that has had problems at times because of interpersonal dynamics with leadership or senior staff or whatever, and here's how I would recommend going through this. But when I offered him the opportunity to talk to senior staff at PV, he declined. So to me, there was no good faith brokerage of this dynamic of trying to adjudicate it and ameliorate it and remedy it if you didn't want to honestly, in good faith, understand what was going on under the hood and behind the curtain. So that was for me, these guys were not serious. But this is, the slate that James had created, refusing to understand what was really going on, just taking James's word as a fait accompli, who James had chosen to become the next board. And this is what a narcissist does, right? He runs through people, he finds new people. Thaler, to his credit, was a little bit more sober.
Let me pause you, because now we're going to Thaler, right?
Yes, John Thaler.
And since you're back on the email here, I'll note the Bates numbers on the electronic version you provided don't match the Bates numbers on the document that you gave to the deponent. I'm not sure if I'm actually looking at the right document. I've tried to compare a little bit, but obviously counsel on Zoom doesn't have the benefit of seeing the actual physical exhibit.
Guys, you got to tighten up process here in Childers Law.
Thank you, and I appreciate that. And I do just want to confirm that I'm seeing what the witness is seeing.
You are not.
Okay. All right. I found the what would you gentlemen prefer, the highlighted or unhighlighted?
Highlighted, if that's what's in front of me, I would assume.
Yeah.
Since you're going to be citing those highlights, I'm guessing.
All right. I will now upload that one.
All right, so this is going to be a corrected 10?
Yeah.
All right.
Would you be willing to provide your text messages with Chart Westcott? Mr. Tyrmand?
I would have to talk to counsel about that, if that's prudent, since I am a witness and not a party to this yet, on whether compelling that is a prudent move.
You have them on your phone. You've testified, right?
Yeah, of course.
And they're available to you today?
In the format of me reading them, I'm not going to give up custody of my phone. But I'd be happy to read the exchanges between Chart Westcott and Fettig at a later point today. I would like to address this Thaler intermediation.
That's appreciated. I'll take you up on that.
Great. But that means in full, not cherry-picked.
Well, that's why I think it might be more efficient to just provide them. I don't mean, how long are these text messages?
I don't know. I haven't looked at them in years. I mean, I assume I have them. I mean, I did switch phones at some point, but I'm pretty sure they're there. I don't know how Apple does on old messages. James is excited. Maybe there's another smoking gun.
Well, over lunch, if you would pull them up and be prepared to, at minimum, let me know
Certainly.
how many there are, how long they are.
Certainly. It would be a pleasure, a privilege, and an honor.
All right. The new Exhibit 10
Okay,
should
so
now
this actually explains what I was referencing before about the gap between the second to last and last page. So, thank you.
There are no Bates numbers on this particular copy. Is that intentional?
No.
Do you have a green highlight as well on
Yeah.
yours?
Yeah, on one section, I believe. Yeah. There's one section that's green.
It appears to be the same document, but I'll have to look at it later.
All right. Well, Nick, I mean, you should be able to represent. Is this the same document as what the witness has?
As far as I can tell, I mean, there were two versions saved in the folder here. One said
Page four's got
highlighted
the
next
green.
to it.
Yeah.
So
Page 4.
It doesn't have the big space.
this is, to the best of my knowledge,
Yeah,
the
that's
same
just a
document.
printer error.
And if it's not, The exhibit in front of the witness will be attached to the deposition transcript at the end of this.
So, Mr. Whitney, just a quick audit here on page 7. There's a gigantic space on the physical copy sitting in front of Mr. Tyrmand. And there is not a gigantic space at the top of the page on page 7 of the electronic version. That would lead me to believe these are different documents.
That sounds like the space. That sounds like the space I was referring to in the electronic version that was originally shared.
Yeah, but if you look, all right, so let's look at the document that's in front of you. Although there's a space, and that looks like be a printing error because the same words appear as Mr. Tyrmand has already noticed.
Yes.
Mr. Tyrmand respectfully doesn't have the electronic version in front of him, so.
Right.
That's a fair
but
point.
I don't.
It's positive.
It looks like the formatting on this electronic version is more than the standard piece of printer paper. It's more like legal.
Okay.
Do you happen to have the version with the Bates numbers on it so we can?
I think what happened, it looks to me like when our office sent the various exhibits to the printer, the assistant who did that, Bates labeled them ahead between me collecting them and her sending them to the printer. So no, I don't have one on my computer.
Guys, we're burning daylight here.
I agreed.
Maybe what we could do is when you're asking questions about it, just make sure that we're all on the same page
Literally.
before you move too quickly.
Okay. Mr. Tyrmand, I interrupted you. You were getting ready to describe John Thaler.
Yeah, I started to describe him. A hedge fund guy, Chicago grad, Connecticut-based, was a potential donor to PV. I don't believe he ever made a donation to PV, and that actually comes up quite a bit in our correspondence, which I'm sure you've read, that he was interested in donating to PV, but he had some actual conflicts of interest, not fallacious conflicts of interest that I pointed out. He was looking to donate to PV, as I read it, for a quid pro quo in terms of targeting where we investigated. That being said, in the initial phase of his engagement with this saga.
Oh, let me stop you. So that rings a bell. What you're referencing, am I correct, is John Thaler wanted an investigation of the Connecticut school system or something?
Yeah, he wanted an investigation, if I recall correctly, and I think I do. He wanted an investigation into his son's principal at a school.
Okay.
Which, to James and Barry's and other people in development, to their credit, that was a non-starter. We're not mercenaries. We're not going out to look at whoever bête noir you have and then investigate them to smear them or whatever. Now, he also had another conflict that I diagnosed in the middle of our engagement over the course of, it was like 3 weeks or so, which was one of his portfolio companies was looking for content. I think it was Rumble, that he was an investor early in Rumble into the SPAC, Special Purpose Acquisition Corporation. And as such, him trying to right the PV ship and install James, we were not clear as to what agreements might have existed between them and James working with his portfolio company. And whether there was or there wasn't, the potential that existed was such it should have been disclosed, as I pointed out to Mr. Thaler in an email and to all of the group that was CC'd in this multi-week back and forth we had. In the initial conversation with John Thaler, he spoke to me, he spoke to Tom, I believe he spoke to Dan. There was some chippiness in the email back and forth, but there was some collegial conversations on the phone. And ultimately, the sort of apotheosis of his engagement was a group call right before this date, I believe. Might have been like a day or two before, where it was, okay, here's the deal, guys. I've intermediated, I've analyzed, I've talked to all the parties, and here's our solution. Everybody on the board resign, cut and run, move on. James comes back, and he puts his new slate of board in, and everything's fine. And nobody was really that open to that. Skakel maybe a little, but quickly soured on it as well, because there was no remediation of the behaviors that we had diagnosed. There was no real assurances. There was sort of paper-thin assurances that there wouldn't be retaliation against those employees that complained about James. And James's general practice was to retaliate against anyone who complained about him, anybody who was, not full, as he called it, fully aligned with him. They would all be in the crosshairs. So, that was not something that we accepted, and certainly, the employees were not all that thrilled with the idea of James coming back and retaliating against them. They were all very worried about what that would look like, which is why in the board meeting, we suggested as a remediation mechanism for him to take some time off, for us to get to the bottom of what needs to be remediated on a financial side, as well as work on the cultural dynamics and interpersonal, get him some therapy so that he could learn to talk to people like human beings. And we could try and rebuild. Of course, James, in that interim, went out and set fire in the public domain to the organization's reputation, to us personally, and did all he could to make sure that that would never happen. That the only way that it would come back to the previous form in any sense would be him riding back on a white horse, claiming victory, no matter how pyrrhic it was, and everybody's lives were destroyed, as well as no, of course, remediation, because he was in total denial that he did anything wrong regarding spending. And certainly the testimonies at the board meeting and then the audit later fully crystallized there was a lot wrong there, including that helicopter ride we should talk about. I know that's been of interest to you guys. So Thaler, he tried, but it was very one-sided, even though it came in the initial as trying to be a Solomonic influence on the process, but ultimately it was just another false start.
You mentioned this suggestion that the entire board resign, that Thaler made that suggestion?
Well, James had already said it. He'd already sent emails basically saying, all of you resign, I come back. That's my offer to you, which is not really, negotiations are about concessions and not demanding line in the sand. This is what, line in the sand, no pun intended, a piece of crap, that this is what's going to happen or nothing. And this is after he'd already, really done a number on the organization, on all of us personally, smeared us, slandered us, libeled us, and then claimed he was being silent. He wasn't doing anything, as he had proxy after proxy. Jack Posobiec, litigating something he doesn't understand because he's got an IQ of 70. A serious legal process that has to go on here, and James is litigating through his Twitter feed, or Oldro Swig, or Alexander Muse, who he later hired. And then also at the same time, we knew at that point that he had already incorporated another organization while he's still employed with PV, which is why there's one of the predicates of this lawsuit was that he incorporated Transparency One or something in Delaware, and he was already planning his sophomore effort here on this.
That claim's been dismissed, right?
You can talk to Ben Wetmore and Michael Harris about that. I'm just a fact-finding witness here, Mr. Whitney.
I didn't actually hear the question, but it sounds like I object to form.
You would. Definitely
the letter here, you say you're familiar with it.
would. Yeah.
Can you point me in the letter to where John Thaler suggests the entire board resign?
No, this was on a phone call. So could I read this whole thing? And look, it then got mediated back to just me and Barton at some point, that he suggested just that he could do business with the older guys that he could push around. Go along. Skakel was more go along to get along. John Garvey's wasn't as involved in this process. He was involved on a statutory level, but he wasn't engaged with the employees to this degree. So it was Thaler's assessment and diagnosis was that Joe Barton and I were the problems because we were the ones who were a little bit more strident in our view for both accountability and protection of employees, because we knew these people. We cared about them. We cared about them as people, even though James didn't. His troops he would throw under the bus in a moment's notice. He didn't give a shit about anybody. So there was some level of pullback. Well, Barton and Tyrmand have to go. But ultimately, my recollection is that everyone's like, we do not like the way that this has turned, that this has, because they could have, look, Alembic, Skakel, and Garvey could have voted Barton and I off the board. They had a 5-person board, their 3 votes, so they were not bought into it in full either.
The short answer is that the suggestion that the entire board resign does not appear in this Thaler letter, does it?
No, but it was on a phone call that we had right previous to this letter.
Right.
And it was also at the same time concurrent James sending an email, which I know you have, that, here's my terms, you all resign.
And so you spoke directly to John Thaler through this process?
A bunch of times, yeah.
One-on-one?
On the phone, one-on-one, never in person.
And he expresses an opinion, and by the way, I think Exhibit X now in the chat has the bait stamps you're asking for, in case you want to follow along that way.
Sorry, Exhibit X?
Yeah. I'll fix the labeling, but if you open that last attachment, I think you'll see the bait stamps. He expresses an opinion here that the board was pursuing a path that was both unnecessary and likely to lead to a bad outcome for everyone involved. Did he express that opinion to you on the phone calls?
Yes.
So you were warned that if you proceeded the way that you were suggesting and sort of started this war with James O'Keefe, that it was going to be a bad outcome?
The only person starting a war was James O'Keefe. Nobody publicly made comments. I didn't say a word publicly during this process.
You didn't, but Project Veritas did, didn't they?
Months later.
Objection.
I'm sorry, I was muted, but for those last two questions, I had an objection to form.
Are you sure there wasn't a Project Veritas video posted to the internet laying out all these accusations?
My recollection is that was months later, not in February that first month. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong, but that's just my recollection. That, I was emphatic that nobody say anything publicly, that nobody, we have a process. These things, and my exact words were, this is not going to, my view is this cannot be adjudicated through Jack Posobiec and Oldrow Swig's Twitter account. This needs to be adjudicated with some sort of mature process as statute demands, given the fact pattern. Now, that's not to say some junior employees weren't tweeting and stuff like that, and they were chastised by Dan or whoever else. Not my role to tell them what they can or cannot do.
I'm on the top of page 3, which is Bates labeled 0130. And John Thaler says, I shared my view that I didn't believe PV could exist without James. Did he express that view to you?
Yeah.
And what was your position?
My position was, be that as it may, that's not going to hinder a process of doing the right thing by the stakeholders, the legal regulatory bodies, the employees, the board, who is liable based on James' behavior, since we found out, the things we found out, whether it's New York State employment law or the spending that we viewed as misappropriate. Certainly I viewed, Joe Barton viewed. Ultimately, I think everyone did because we voted to do an audit. So, there was no intent in February 2023 to move forward with PV without James, but he was busy setting fire to the organization and running away. You haven't talked about the fact pattern of, we suspend him from certain things on February 6th, but not his board representation as both chairman and a board member and a fiduciary of the organization. So on February 10th, Friday, February 10th, we're having a board meeting he doesn't show up to. I know why he didn't show up to, because it was to go over the financials. And he is spinning this whole narrative publicly that, I was suspended, I couldn't, they put me in this impossible, untenable situation where I was suspended, but I had to show up to the board meeting. No, you had to show up to the board meeting. You're a board member.
Well, it does seem a bit illogical.
No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't.
You suspend someone for
Objection to form.
suspend someone for 2 weeks and send them away.
We suspend somebody from having control over finances and employees, given that these people just pointed out major discrepancies with statute and practice. And we said, no, you can't, immediately start firing people. We're going to suspend you. We're going to figure out what we're going to do, because we found some really bad stuff here, bad practice, both in both of these facets, financial, and keep in mind, he also tried to fire the CFO who said you have to pay back money. So this is stuff that we weren't screwing around with. This is stuff that we needed to do a sober, mature process around. It's a $20 million organization in the crosshair of regulators already. So we weren't going to just say, okay, yeah, it's fine, all's good. No, we suspended him so that he couldn't do the things we knew he would do if he wasn't. And by the way, he still used the miles to book personal flights, which he knows is illegal and wrong, but he still did it. Tom had to spend weeks with American Express trying to claw back the miles that he used, which are firm property, so that he couldn't buy his own plane rides on it. That's theft. So he continued to behave like a savage and a child and a monster, even during this process. So yeah, excuse me if you believe it's untenable. He had to show up to that board meeting. He was a board member, and we had to go over the financials. He didn't want to go over the financials.
You've just testified that the board's actions were limited to employee issues and financial issues.
No,
Objection.
no, that's not true. I didn't testify to that at all.
Well, I asked you, it's a bit illogical to put someone on paid leave for 2 weeks and then require them to be back 4 days later, is it not?
Objection leading.
He had multiple roles, and I know that you're just following orders here, and you're a smart guy with a Harvard JD, but he had a role as an employee, and he had a role as a board member. He was suspended as an employee, where he had oversight of other employees, so he couldn't retaliate against them, or technically use the funds, which he figured out a way to use anyway. But he wasn't suspended from the board until later. It was demanded that he show up to a board meeting. We called a board meeting. He's a member of the board. He didn't resign from the board. That's the reality. You know it as well as I know it.
So the board can send him on 2 weeks leave and then demand that he show up for a board meeting 4 days later?
As a board member,
Objection
yes.
form.
Is that how typical board proceedings work, that you, on a kind of short fuse like that, you demand that a board member show up on a certain date?
We called a board
Objection.
meeting. He's a member of the board.
When was that board meeting noticed?
Noticed whatever the statutory 48 hours before, I believe. So it was, and we had said, I believe, in the board call, we will reconvene in the next few days to go, because that board meeting was 6 hours. Everybody was emotionally spent, exhausted. People have been crying. We've been hearing employees cry. It was not the right time to join a conversation about finances after the emotional 6 hours going into like 8 or 9 p.m. To do it at that moment. But we said we would enjoying this conversation in coming days, as we needed to do, given all the testimonies that had said this, and this.
In fact, it wasn't even a good time for him to respond to the 6 hours of allegations, was it?
Objection form.
Objection to form.
Not even asking a question.
I will recall what George Skakel said when James said, I want to respond to them, one by one. And that was so he could play the same semantic games that he always plays and try to literally neuter people's testimony about the abuse they've had. And George snapped at him and said, it's your time to listen for once. And George was 100% right. We were all in agreement on that. It was time for this guy who had abused all these people, who were on this board call crying. The women were crying. One woman talked about, two women talked about personal health issues that they had suffered, while being there. Men were crying too. I mean, it was brutal. And so that was not the time to enjoy it at 8 or 9 p.m. There's another fraud he committed in that, which he publicly has spun out, which is, he had this whole apology that he was going to share with, and the board said, no, you can't. That's bullshit. We encouraged him, each of us to a man said, no, please do communicate your apologies, please do send out this email or letter saying that you screwed up. I think that would actually go a long way into helping rebuild a little bit of trust, rebuild maybe a little bit of complicity, contrition on your part might actually be construed really, really well. But he never sent that because it was a bargaining chip. It was a bargaining chip for him to retain all power and authority over everybody else. Narcissist. I mean, we can go back to the DSM. Interpersonally exploitive, haughty, uses people. So no, he 100% was required to show up to that board meeting, or he could have resigned from the board. But instead, he was busy publicly or behind the scenes spinning for the public and using proxies to create a narrative. I mean, I got called. I was at a dinner in Coral Gables on a Wednesday, February 8th at 6:30 or 7 p.m. Eastern. I got called by somebody from New York Magazine. I don't know how they got this. I mean, and it was a very one-sided. And then people were leaking to Tim Pool the letter. That was R.C. Maxwell, we believe, which is a James proxy, because they wanted to negate the things that people were complaining about. Well, people were complaining about whatever they wanted to complain about. After years of abuse, they had a right to be heard. And of course, the mob can spin it as nothing burger after nothing burger, but people were hurting. And the board meeting's public. People can hear it. I noticed that James only takes small segments of it under false light to put it out there. Like when I said, nothing will, he's done this a lot, and this is a tort, so be aware, James, that the segment from the board meeting that said, Tyrmand said, nothing will change on the margin, paraphrasing, quote, if there's no James O'Keefe. That was very clearly in reference to a few week or a month or two suspension to clean the shit up. It wasn't like we're going to eject James O'Keefe and run Project Veritas without him. It was very clear, but that's cut off, and the context is eliminated to spin a narrative, which is so incredibly dishonest. That's not journalism. That's fraud. You'll be held to account for that.
I'll mark that answer for purposes of
More. That was
the
sweet.
4-minute, 5-minute answer.
Okay, so what's your next question?
Again, top of what's page labeled 0130. I shared that the biggest roadblock to getting James to the table was that trust and faith had broken down between James and two board members, specifically Matt Tyrmand and Joe Barton, and that the best way to move forward was for those two individuals to recuse themselves so that the remaining three board members could engage James without emotion and personal animus. Why not recuse yourself from the situation?
Because there were, at that point, about 60 employees who were scared of him and wanted to be sure that they would be protected from retaliation. And Joe Barton and I were the ones who knew these employees best personally and had their best interests at heart because we had personal relationships after being in the trenches with them for years.
So,
And I will also add, on a compound factor, cutting and running, like I said, not what I do. I believed that if I did not see a remediation process when the regulators come, and this was pre-2024, we're in the crosshairs, the regulators are all over us, all over him, O'Keefe, all over the organization. Very, very easy to go after all of us in the organization for wrongdoing, if there was. And then the liability that I possessed because of his actions, not mine, the only action I would be liable for that's on me is that I did not act sooner to, if you, like the New York subway ad says, if you see something, say something. Probably I am guilty of not taking deeper, stronger action sooner, seeing him degenerate into such a monster with such gross behavior of the way he treated people and the way he treated the firm's coffers. So yeah, that was a non. If they want to vote me off, fine. Then I am not complicit. They want to vote me off, fine. I told that to many of them over and over again. If you believe you can go about this and figure out a way and you want to vote me off, I don't control you. I don't think you should. I'd like to see this through one way or the other. That's just my personal ethos. But you have the power as a corpus, 3 against 2, 4 against 1, whatever. You vote me off. I don't control you guys. You guys do your thing. They didn't.
you didn't trust that the 3 members that would remain if you and Joe recused, Steve Limbeck, John Garvey, and George Skakel, would find an appropriate resolution?
I did not. No, I did not, because that would have been, oh, the easiest thing is just bring James back. And then, it may take a few months, the dust would settle, and then he'd start retaliating against employees.
Did Eric O'Keefe, are you familiar with that name?
Very.
Did he also invest in your companies?
He might have done like a 5 or 10K ticket into Claim Found. I hadn't thought about it, but yeah,
You
perhaps.
forgot him before, too?
Yeah. Again, professional investor, used to be a trader on the Chicago board of either the CBO, the CBOT, or the CME. So this is a professional trader, and I think he did a very, very small ticket into Claim Found, years ago. Again, this is a grown-up individual who we used to talk hours every week. We talked about markets, we talked about politics, we talked about history. This is somebody I viewed as like another uncle, a mentor, and he's probably, of all the people in this drama that I look at and the relationship that got severed over James's behavior and everything that transpired, that's the one that kind of bothers me the most. I thought he was as a high integrity a person as existed.
Eric O'Keefe?
Eric O'Keefe, yeah, and I believe I was wrong in that assessment because he went with the cult. And he is somebody I thought had an incredibly strong moral compass. And he texted me during the board meeting, and he said, "This is beginning to look like a pylon." And I said, "Perhaps, but these are rape victims, and they get to address their accuser."
Rape victims?
Yes, it's a metaphor.
Okay, that's a pretty strong metaphor.
Yeah, if you saw the abuse that people lived under at PV, especially in recent years, it's not that. I mean, if you ask them, is that an appropriate metaphor? The vast majority would say absolutely. The abuse, the beatdowns, the yelling, the condescension, the embarrassing, the trying to get people to turn against, whoever object of duration he had that day. It was incredibly, this is what narcissists do.
Just to be clear, you're not making any allegations of rape.
No, not sexual rape. This is a rape metaphor.
It's just...
But that's what I said to Eric O'Keefe, and he got it. It was a metaphor. No, there was no... I think there was only one employee. Previously I'd heard from people who predated me that he was trying to sleep with people for jobs and stuff like that. The only one I suspect that happened with in the years that I was there was one employee, his co-star in Oklahoma, who I believe there might have been some sexual relationship, because when it came time for layoffs, she did absolutely no work and was useless, but she was loyal to him and he protected her job. So I had my suspicions about that, but that's just suspicions.
And you had your own romantic interest in a PV employee, right?
I had no romantic interest in any PV employee.
What about the text message you talked about earlier?
I said a female was
Objection.
attractive. Come on, dude. Like, don't be silly.
Oh,
Yeah.
you just say attractive out of just a platonic interest? She's attractive?
Not a platonic interest. I thought she was a beautiful chick. And I, as a male, talking to another male, are going to assess that occasionally. And the locker room talk was, it was nowhere near the level of locker room talk that I, sent to Alexander Muse. So, it's not here nor there. It is as...
And you're so confident that it wouldn't be viewed as a romantic interest that you're not willing to have those text messages published?
I took my job in a role where I had power over other people, something I did not abuse. I never made a romantic interlude or overture to any PV employee, and I had one come on to me nonstop, and I kept telling that was inappropriate. And if I say who that was, it's embarrassing because she's as repulsive a human being as exists on this God's green earth. I'll say it, her name is Laura Loomer. And she was constantly trying to, solicit some sort of romantic engagement, texting me, let me come over right now. I'm in Manhattan. And I mean, she smelled like dead fish and like the brig of a 17th century pirate clipper. So, I mean, the whole thing was disgusting. But there was never any romantic anything between me and any PV employees. James, I suspect, had something with what's her name, Julie, his co-star from Oklahoma, because he protected her job, even though she was ineffectual. I don't know that to be true. She did go with him to OMG before leaving him as well. But that wasn't the real issue here, at least under my tenure involved. Though I'd heard from a previous employee that predated me that he was caught, offering jobs like secretary jobs to people who would sleep with him. But he was a very frustrated young man.
All right. We did not make it through the letter. I suspected we would not. But it's 1:04, so we can go off the record and break for lunch.
Off the record at 104.